morning, everyone. It's Antonia. You're listening to So Now You Know. Tonight, we're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about how we manage it, how we save it, and a little bit about how we spend it. I'm really excited to have my friend, Cliff Griffin, with me tonight. Cliff works for Merrill Lynch. He is a wealth management advisor. And as you know, with the show, it's always about my relationships to my friends and the wonderful things that they're doing and how they teach me about things I have no idea about. So the way I have come to know Cliff is through his lovely wife, who is a very good and dear friend. And through that relationship with her, I met Cliff and found out what he does for a living. And it scared me at first. I had no idea. And then when I thought about my own finances and whether or not I invest, I immediately realized, wow, I think my husband does all that for me. So it wasn't until recently that I came into some money. And I decided, why don't I go on my own, reach out to Cliff, who knows a little bit about this, to help me figure it out and manage it. And although it wasn't a lot of money, Cliff, it was my money, which was a really good conversation with him for him to share his ideas and thoughts about us as wives and women and what we do with our money, whether it's an inheritance or if it's money for retirement, that we really should be thinking about those things for down the road, which I hadn't done before. So welcome, Cliff.
Thank you.
So we're going to start, because we have a lot of stuff to talk about. And like I said, I'm really clueless about this, so I have a lot of good questions to ask you. But I want you to share with the audience a little bit about yourself. I'm always interested to see why people picked the particular profession that they're in. So if you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you. I am the financial manager who has managed money for the last 28 years. I started in 1989, and the business has changed an awful lot since then. But I just started working with financial planning because I really wanted to help people grow their wealth and reach their goals and objectives. And it's really something that I felt like everybody needs some advice on financial management. I guess initially started too, wanted to learn more about it. So I felt like, going into something in this area where I learned about stocks and bonds and a variety of products that I had no idea that even existed when I first started in the business was really enlightening for me. So I've been sharing that with family and friends, and my business has just really grown from the years of doing this. So
what about when you were growing up made you want to become, or did you want to be in the finance world?
No, I think growing up, I thought I was going to actually go into...
Shout out to St. Louis,
yeah,
that's where
exactly,
we're from.
St. Louis, exactly. I thought I was going to be a lawyer and practice law.
Nothing wrong with a lawyer, Cliff.
Not at all.
Easy.
Would have been an interesting field to go into as well. But I think what I really thought about is working as also having a lot of control over my own my own business, and that's really what it's like working with a large brokerage firm, where you really control who your clients are. You go out and get the clients. You form a relationship with those clients. There's a bond that you have where you get to know. I mean, I go to clients' weddings, I go to graduations. I really get to see the end work as well. So I may start off with a husband and wife who or a couple who are just getting out of college. In some cases it's been and have worked with people over 25 years and just seeing their families grow. So
what would you say? I mean, I see the importance of I guess generational wealth or figuring that out for oneself. But what would you say are barriers to either people's experiences or their desire to think about retirement and those future goals? Because that wasn't my upbringing. That wasn't something that my parents did. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but they just did it very differently as immigrants and new to this country. So what would you say? I mean, 25 years of someone planning. How do you get there? How do you become that person that can save that way? That discipline, I guess I should say, right?
Well, I think it's there are two components. One is the savings piece, and that's just taking a little bit of what you make and putting it away in something that you're not spending it on a daily basis. And then there's investing. So some people are very good savers, but not good investors. So a lot of times, our parents were good at putting money away and putting it into CDs, buying, in some cases, a lot of life insurance, just because they felt like that was an investment for them. But more importantly, I think a lot of families bought real estate. So they said, you buy your home and you pay for it over the next 20 years or 30 years, and then that's your retirement money. And that was their plan. And so, there are a lot of different plans out there, right? So I think it was simple. It was easy. You can see it. As we know, real estate has done a lot in the last, even 10 years, right? So that's not the only place to put money. A lot of people put money into their retirement accounts, 401ks, 403bs, other various retirement accounts. And although they feel like it's savings, they don't look at it. Like, they put the money away. They don't look at it it's for a rainy day. And because they don't look at it, they end up typically having a lot of money when they get ready to retire, because they don't worry about whether the market's up or down. They just tend to continue to put money away on an ongoing basis. What we try to do is make sure that as people get closer to retirement, or people have lower risk tolerance, that we adjust the portfolio on an ongoing basis. So I think knowing the different investments that are in a retirement plan and being able to adjust them, but also creating something very similar to that outside of your retirement plan. So you have multiple things. So you should own real estate. You should have a retirement plan, and you should have investments outside of your real estate. If you want to buy a second home, you're sending kids to college, a variety of different goals that you may have. People want to save for a business. Maybe they say, you know what, I'm going to work for this company for 20 years, and then I'm going to start my own business. Great. Well, we need to put money away for that business. And we need to make sure that when you get closer to retiring from the job you've had maybe for 20 years, that you're not taking more risk on the back end, we call it, so that you're being more conservative at that particular point.
So when you're starting out and you're getting your first job, I mean, I know when I start coming out of grad school and looking at the folks that would come by the office to talk about the 401k, or if you worked for the state, you had a state pension, and you had all these vehicles that you're saying you could use to save for that money. I was overwhelmed. I mean, I just did with what I thought everyone else was doing. I know now that probably wasn't the safest way to go, because eventually when you change jobs and that's not offered the same way, like say if you work with the state and you're going to a private, it all changes. So what is the difference between when you're talking about 401ks, maybe pension funds and things like that? Like, what are we looking for when we go to a job and this is offered as a retirement package?
Well, you're looking for, a lot of times there are guidelines. A lot of times they ask, there's some questionnaires you can ask that will kind of give you a general idea. But you're really looking for, okay, how long am I, how old am I now? When do I plan to retire, or when do I plan to take money out of this retirement vehicle? A lot of people get caught up into, well, the company doesn't match as much. Well, whatever they match is fine, because all the money that you put in, you get to take out. So you should put as much as you can in your retirement plan so that you can, so that it helps you on your taxes, so because it's pre-tax money that you're putting in there. So you're really saving money just by putting it in there. And then you want to look at the various funds, and they typically have them weighed based on risk. Obviously, the ones that are in more equities are going to be more risky. The ones that are in bonds are going to be less risky. So you want to make sure you have a good mix between that. And really the idea is, when am I taking the money out of my retirement plan?
It's still confusing to me. And I think it was definitely much more confusing to me back then. But when you say that you're eventually going to take the money out, I mean, being 20 some odd years old and thinking that I'm not going to touch this money till I'm in my 60s, mm-hmm. I don't know if at that age I was thinking that.
Yeah, right? That's a great point. And one of the things you said, you've got in many cases, some people have student loans, they have maybe some credit card debt that they got while they were in school, and now somebody's saying, hey, you should put some money away. The reality is, you have to pay yourself first, right? So you treat yourself like you're a bill. So you save some money in your 401k, you place some debt down, you pay some of your credit card and also some of your student loan debt. But you do all of those together, and you shouldn't put all your money into one area. So no matter how much you have in debt, you still want to make sure you're saving some money on an ongoing basis as well.
And so what happens when we leave the job or we go somewhere else or we move? What are the steps that people do to make sure that they're holding on to what they have currently saved? And
So
do people take time off? Like, they're sometimes putting money into that 401k and then there's years that you don't? Like, what are the consequences of that?
As long as you can afford to put money away, then you certainly want to do that. Do you take that money when you leave the company? You can do a couple different options. You can either keep the money there in that existing 401k. You can roll it over into an IRA, or you can roll it over to the new plan or the new company that you go into as well. So it really depends on what's the best thing for yourself, what you feel more comfortable with. And you should probably look at all options as well. But a lot of people feel like or think like, especially in 20-something years old, is that they're going to leave that money behind. But you're not. Most companies have a 3 to 5 year time frame where the money invests every single year. So whatever they put in and is vested, you get to take that with you. But pre-tax money is always good to it's better for you to do it pre-tax than for you to do it after tax.
And so what are your thoughts about who's investing and who's not investing? Like when we talk about males, females, who's investing more and more aggressive?
Aggressive?
Mm-hmm. Because I feel I'm not. And I hate to say that stereotype, but I don't, I mean, part of it is me being exposed to being a saver, but it is intimidating. So I'm always interested to see, like, what is that statistic or what is it, who are the people that are really investing? Because I don't want to think it's just a rich person's thing, right? Mm-hmm. Or it's a middle-class thing, because everybody can do it. And I think one of the barriers was one, immigrant my immigrant parents who didn't know any better, and then two, me as a young female just not getting it because I didn't have that background.
Yeah, I don't know if it's gender specific at all. I mean, I don't know. I don't have any stats in particular about that. I can tell you that women are making more money than they had in the past. Women are tending to be the breadwinners in many cases of the families where we didn't see as much of that, but we're seeing a trend of that going on in the past. Women are inheriting a lot more money. So the women are controlling a lot more money than they have ever in the past. We also have some stats that way back where it says that women don't have financial plans as often as many as men do. However, a lot of them want to have financial plans. So you really need a coach in this place to really get to know you and understand what your needs are, what's important to you, and to help you guide you in that situation as well. I would say probably though, I don't know if I want to say that men are more aggressive.
Good job. See, that was a good.
No, I don't want to.
Nice.
When I say aggressive, I mean more equity oriented. As far as that's concerned. So I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but I do know that, and I don't know the saving ratio either between men and women as well.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll pick up on this because I think where I'm going with my point is sometimes, like when I look at my mother-in-law or older women, more experienced women who's either have lost a spouse but are left with some a good significant amount of income who have no idea, right? Because they just didn't do that, or people that find themselves in circumstance where like I have this cash, where do I now go with it? So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to get into a little financial literacy of how we get people, our kids, ourselves as young adults and as married couples, how do we get on that path of saving? So we will be back soon.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network.
Are you stuck in a rut? Negative thoughts, feelings, and conversations got you down? Hi, I'm Noreen Sumter, the Potentiator. Tune in every Tuesday, 9 to 10 Eastern Time, and listen for new ideas on my show, Beyond Potential, Live Life Your Way, on talkradio.nyc.
Who do you want to connect with?
Are you an entrepreneur or intrapreneur looking to build your following?
Welcome to our show.
Follow Me Friday with Joan
and Priya.
Tune in every Friday at noon Eastern
on talkradio.nyc.
We're your digital connectors. Woo woo! What's that?
Talking Alternative Radio, 24 hours a day.
So welcome back. You're listening to So Now You Know with Antonia, and I have my guest, Cliff Griffin, who works with Merrill Lynch as a financial wealth management advisor. So just going back to what we were just talking about, you were talking about getting coaching and getting some ideas or suggestions of how we invest our money and so forth. But I just want to go back to, when's it too late? Or is it ever too late to go down that path of saving money?
It's a great point, and I've had that. That's a good question that comes up. It's never too late, right? Because you never know whether you are with a partner or you're not when the financial decision is going to rely on you. So, for example, I've had clients who have come to me at 70 years old who's had a spouse pass away who was the primary decision maker for the family. And they find out that there's more money there than they expected. They never really knew. They never asked questions. And so now they have to make this decision at 70 years old. So, again, if you're starting at 30, 40, 50, certainly you're still, in my standpoint, still early in the game, per se. The question is, when you're starting, the longer you wait to start, the more you have to really go by how you feel about the person you're working with. Are they asking you the right questions, or are they trying to sell you a product? And I think you can tell when someone's trying to sell you something, a product per se. Like, do they really care about you as a person? Are they asking about your goals, your objectives, your kids? Who are you taking care of? Other family members? Do you how often? What are your hobbies and interests? I think they need to know a lot about you, and if they're asking a lot of questions, that's the person that you'd wanted to work with.
So let's go put this in my time frame, I guess. So when I'm coming out of law school, I'm not working for much money. Like we talked about before, I have debt. I have all these things going on in my life that I don't think I can make all my bills, right? So for the single person who's starting out young, maybe you're at a job that has just a person who comes in for an hour a day to come talk about this pension for this 401k. It's limited time. But again, you're not thinking 30 years down the road of where the savings is going. So what do we do when we're coming out with a new job and we're thinking about that?
All right. I think you have to have short-term, intermediate, and long-term goals, right? So you have to say to yourself, okay, short-term may be I'm going on vacation in 6 months and I need to have money set aside for that. Intermediate may be, in 5 years I'm going to buy a house. And long-term may be retiring in 20 years. So your savings or your investing doesn't have to be for long-term or short-term or intermediate term. So I think you need to split that part of it up as well. I think it's important to have a travel fund. In fact, I think you should have a travel fund, and you should say, I'm going to spend X amount of dollars on traveling, and you should spend it all when you go travel. It just makes you feel better, I think, for a lot of people. If you like to shop, you should have a shopping fund. If you like art, you should have a fund that you say, you know what, every year I'm going to buy or I'm going to spend X amount of dollars on my art hobby. And I think, like anything, it's just you do a little bit at a time, and then eventually you look up and you say, wow, I've got several paintings that I like. I've got this amount in my retirement plan. Now I'm ready to buy a house, and I'm ready to put down, or apartment, I'm ready to put down money in that area as well. So, and while you're continually paying down debt. So you want to balance those two out.
So I'm just thinking about this. I'm thinking about my kids, right? So if my parents didn't instill all these fantastic things that you're saying, which sound great, in me at a young age, I kind of missed the boat for that time till I had to teach myself, right? To save and to put the money aside and pay my debt. So let's just jump to when we have kids. What does good role modeling, financial literacy look for them? Because I would want my college kid or my kid coming out of graduate school not to come home. I no longer want to support them. I don't want to see them in my house. But I think it might be it's never too late, but to instill in them at a young age. What are your thoughts about that? Because yes, I give allowance, but I think my daughter's borrowed about 6 times off the $20 that I've given her, because it's never in her pocket. It's always somewhere else. But to get to that responsible young adult that's doing those things that you just mentioned, it seems to me that we got to start them really young.
I think so. I mean, I think you start with allowance. Allowance is a very good tool to use to give to your kids. I mean, if you think about it, you probably give them money anyway, right? So if you say, okay, I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars this week, and you have to do this, you're teaching responsibility. You're using, money to help them with that. You don't want them to borrow and reborrow the money. You need to say sometimes that, hey, you don't have it. Guess what? You can't get it. No, I'm not going to loan you the money. Whether and so I think that is that's part of that teaching tool, right?
No, you're right.
So you're giving them an allowance for a reason. You're teaching them to take the money with you so they have it for a reason. Those are the things that you want to instill in them. When you give them money, are they saving $10 and spending 10, or are they spending the whole amount? And then if that's fine if they spend the whole amount, but then they don't get any more until next week. So I think that is really, really important for you or for the kids as well. But me teaching them to be responsible and say, okay, you know what, you need to take out the trash on Friday. But guess what? If you didn't take it out on Friday, then I'll take it out Saturday. Well, guess what? Doesn't work that way. I want it out by Friday. So I think those kind of lessons, you're using money to show them how it works. You don't get to show up to work late. You don't get to you don't need to get to put it off until the next day.
Where's the poker? Because I think your kids play poker, and there was a reason behind the outside that's why they play poker. Why is playing games like that helpful in teaching kids responsibility, financial responsibility? I
think it teaches them. It's like Monopoly. Monopoly is a game that we've all played for many, many years, and it's a game that teaches you about real estate, right? It teaches you buy a house, somebody's on your property, they pay rent. It's a ongoing game. Poker actually does that as well for kids. I mean, if you're playing with chips and they're learning to count the chips and they want to win. So now the question is, they have to play with the chips that they have, and they can't play with more chips than they have. So how do you move those chips in and out of the of your I would say your stash of not monies but chips? So I think that is it's a learning experience for them as well. Just like Monopoly, I put them both in the same.
Yeah, my kids, they're pretty good at Monopoly. But I think this generation, they're so quick to have everything that they want. They see it all around them, this instant gratification, that, like I said, my daughter will hustle me for the allowance that I've paid. So I think it is important, if we're going to have that young adult that takes on that responsibility to put money aside, because it's very hard it's hard for us sometimes to put the money aside. So let's fast forward to marriage, because that again is a huge undertaking, right, for a couple to start off young, to start saving. So what advice would you give to folks that are just about to go down the aisle?
So, it really, marriage is an interesting subject.
Is
because
it? No, I'm kidding.
Because I think it depends on where you are in life, how much you have saved and put away, whether you do a prenuptial agreement. We do a lot of, I do some divorce financial planning for people as well. So it really depends on where you are. But I will say there are some things that I think you should know if somebody's getting married for the first time, no matter how old they are. I do think you should look at someone's credit report. I think you should know, you should share each other's credit report.
Really?
You should know, yeah, I think you should, because you think about, when you're going, finance is everything, right? You got to disclose it all. So you need to know someone, their history. Maybe they have bad debt. Maybe they pay bills late. Maybe they, so you don't want those surprises. And many people are getting married later too, right? So they're in their mid-30s and, 30s and later on are getting married. So I think that is it's responsible on both parties. You should talk about finances. You should talk about who's going to pay what expenses. Or you should talk about, are we going to put our money together? I do think everyone should have their own account as well. You should have a joint account. You should have your own
I like
account.
that idea. Yeah, I like that.
But it works, whatever works for you, whatever works. But I do think that, as long as you guys agree and you talk about it ahead of time, that I think it's important to do that as well.
Well, I do think that's probably a conversation that a lot of folks don't talk as openly about. But I do think now this generation, especially when they talk about it all the time, right? They talk about, I think when I got married, you talked about it, but you didn't talk about it in depth, right? It was after you walked down the aisle and a month later, you're like, oh yeah, by the way, I have this law school loan. So it is a conversation that has to take place. And I think also when you talk about prenups, a lot of people, there's a negative connotation to it, but a prenup is a contract, right? It's the way that we're going to manage.
Well, not only that, it's more, a prenuptial agreement is, and it's really agreement between two people, and you're saying to yourself, you're saying, this is what and obviously there could be a lot of different ones. So a lawyer will give you a better understanding on it. But, in general, it's just saying, this is what I came in with, this is what I have. And, you can, I guess, in some prenuptials talk about the future and what you plan to, how you would split up things in the future. Right. But more importantly, protect yourself, I would say, for what you came in the marriage with. So, and just like, this is the debt I have, but these are the assets I have as well. If you own a home, you need to discuss that. If you own a home with your parents, you need to discuss that. If so those are the things that need to come out prior to your marriage, and it needs to be very clear that you plan to not commingle this with married property.
So when you talk about divorce, what did you call it? It had a
Divorce
fancy name.
financial planning.
It makes it so nice. So that's the flip side of it, right? That's how you come in with the assets, you figure out where things are going to go, and then if the marriage doesn't work out, you're then what do you do? What does that mean when you?
So divorce. I mean, prenuptials is I guess part of divorce financial planning, but divorce financial planning is really helping people negotiate what assets they should get in the case of a divorce. So helping them look at their financial situation and saying, okay, here's all of our assets. How do we split this up? Does the person, this person getting the house, or this person getting the retirement fund? Is there a pension? So helping people understand what the financial implications are for splitting or taking a certain percentage of the net worth, the family's net worth.
Because a lot of people can't afford to get divorced.
There's people that feel like they can't afford to get divorced. I mean, people get divorced and end up with less than they did when they were together. That's absolutely true.
Because I think a lot of times you think of like famous people had a prenup, and then you hear how things got divided up, but it was actually pretty smart. But when you take the common person who's going through marital problems, and then they realize, wow, I might be in debt, or they figure out what the consequences are going to be. But do a lot of people do that before they go down that road of divorce? Like, what point would it be a good idea to do this type of looking at the assets and so forth?
I think, yes, a lot of people don't think about that when they go down the road. And in fact, what do they want? They want out, right?
They want out, right.
So they don't really
Leave me
care how
alone.
much it costs. They don't really care how long it's going to take. They just want to get out. Actually, they want to get out as soon as possible, typically. So they don't look at the financial implications of divorce, and they don't realize that, you know what, I'm not going to have a retirement plan, or not the retirement plan, but I'm not going to have medical benefits. I'm not going to have this. So there are a lot of different factors that come in. So I think with a divorce financial planner, looks at specifically, has nothing to do with the legal side of it, doesn't look at, you know, as far as legally what's going to happen, or, you know, child support or anything like that. In a sense, we're looking strictly at financially, how is the person going to be 5 years after the divorce? How are the assets going to be split up, and how is that implementation going to be for you as a person that's being represented by the divorce financial planner?
Good stuff. So we're going to take another break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about estate planning with wills and so forth, because that too comes into this. I think it plays significantly when we're talking about this stuff. So I want you to stay tuned, and we will be right back. You're listening to So Now You Know with Antonia.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network.
If you have an interest in marijuana, you want to know about marijuana, law, policy, and culture, then feel free to join me, Joseph A. Bondi, every Friday at 11 o'clock in the morning on my show In the Know 420 on TalkingAlternative.com.
Legalize the herb to continue to resist the passage of this necessary legislation.
Hi, this is Rob Kay.
And I'm Callie Alpert.
And we're hosts of the Rob and Callie Show. Are you looking for a show that talks about real stuff like life, love, the pursuit of being yourself?
Then you have come to the right place, because we cover topics ranging from chivalry to gratitude to your relationship with money and everything in between.
So listen to us on the Rob and Callie Show, Tuesdays, 8 to 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on talkradio.nyc.
Talking Alternative Radio, 24 hours a day.
So welcome back. It's Antonia, and this is So Now You Know. We're talking with Griffin from Merrill Lynch. Cliff, we've talked about a lot of good stuff here, so I'm going to pick your brains about what you've seen, right, and some of the stories that you've heard, because it is kind of scary. One, it's scary to have that conversation about people's previous debt or before you get married, what that's going to look like. I think it's scary to think, is it too late? Am I too late? If someone's listening to this and thinking, wow, I really missed the boat. So what are your thoughts? Give us some examples of the different situations that come to you that, you resolve them. Like you said, it was never too late. And clearly divorces have to be resolved at some point. Talk to us about some of the clients and the issues that come.
As a general topic.
As a general, yeah.
So for example, and I have one case that comes out in particular. I remember, I talked to you about when you're picking a financial advisor, how they have to ask questions and they have to really get to know you, and they have to really do various things. And one of them is evaluate your current portfolio and look at where you are. So for example, I had a client who was, I would say, she worked for a company for about 30 years. And she made the income she made was very, very small, not as high, a modest income, I would say. And she did this for many years. She put money away in her 401k. She bought company. She reinvested in the company stock. The stock went up. It split. It did a whole bunch of things. She sat down and talked to us, and she was probably around 70, maybe 65 when she came to us and sat down and talked. She said, listen, I'm very conservative. I don't take a lot of risk. I have, and so we had this long, big conversation, and she said, we said, okay. So we talked to her, and she said, so we looked at her portfolio. She had one stock. And so that stock went up. It split. It did very well, and she had probably around $3.5 million worth of stock. Wow. So we're like, whoa, okay. She was lucky, right? Because the stock did really well. The people that worked for the companies that didn't do well or went bankrupt had a different retirement plan, right? So she happened to be very lucky. So our goal with her was to diversify that portfolio, and we did that. It took time, but we did, because this is something she knew she had for a long period of time, but she also knew that she needed to diversify that as well. So that's a case where somebody has saved money over time, and also got a lot of growth potential in the portfolio.
So you must have nervous Nellies all the time. You must have clients that come in one day, not me, but you that would come in and say, this is what I want to do. This is what, I want to be conservative. And then maybe something's happening in politics, or they're reading some of the newspaper and they're like, okay, I want out. I don't feel comfortable about this. And especially we just had the crash several years ago. So how do you deal with the nervous folks? So, which sometimes it is a reality, right? Because the crash happened, and we know
right.
that it was
in
devastating to a lot of people.
2008, we had went through a really bad market. It took a while. Actually, I guess it started late 2007, and really, 2008 got really, really hit hard. As long as a client is diversified properly and has stocks, bonds, cash, real estate, and other various portfolios, and their time horizon. So we talked about short, intermediate, and long-term goals when you're 20 years old. Well, when you're 70 years old, you still need to have short, intermediate, and long-term goals. Short-term goals are paying your expenses. Intermediate-term goals are, maybe selling your home and downsizing and doing some other various things, or traveling more. It could be a lot of various things as well. So I think that you really need to be able to hone in and talk to people about risk and what does that mean, taking all your money and investing in, like I gave you a scenario with a woman who had just one stock, but taking all your money and having it in 2 or 3 stocks. Well, maybe it should be diversified in multiple different asset categories. Maybe as long as your time horizon is in line and the advisor understands that, then you should not be taking a lot of risk. In fact, I'll tell you, I get more worried about the environment we're in right now, where the market is hitting all-time highs, because I've seen markets like this over the 28 years that I've been, managing money for people. And it's this time when people say, oh, I really want to take a lot of risks, or I really want to take money. Why do I have these bonds that aren't doing so well? Why don't I put more money in the equity markets and do those kind of things? And it's kind of like, no, you don't want to do that, because when we talked 3 years ago, you didn't want to take a lot of risks. So don't change your risk tolerance because of what's going on right now, because this market could pull back at any time. So we probably will have some pullback in the market. The question is, how long will it last? Will it be 1 month, 3 months, or 6 months? It depends on why it pulls back. It depends on what we see. So, everything looks good. The economy's doing very well. So, but you want to make sure you're balanced and you have the right balance for yourself. And everyone's different. You could have 10 people in the room and everybody have a different risk tolerance, because some people are still taking care of their kids when they're 7 years old. They're still paying their kids' expenses. Some people are not doing that. Some people are looking at only themselves. Everybody has a different goal. I had a client I had dinner with the other night, and we were talking, and they said, so tell me about some of your financial goals. I said, well, the first goal is we're not leaving any money to our kids.
Stop it.
I was like, that's a goal. That's your goal, and that's okay.
But when someone says that to you, do you look at them funny? Like,
no, because
you don't ask. I'd want to know.
Some people feel like we did all we could for our kids all through when they, all through their growing up. So now it's just us. So their goal is to
Spend it all?
Spend it all. Spend it all. We want to spend the last. I was like, that's
Are they
fine.
leaving it for
That's
you
a
to
good
tell
one.
the kid that he's not getting anything?
That's
in
okay.
case Johnny's your client, you got to say, hey, buddy, don't
But
be.
some people have a number. Some people say, I want to leave my kid $1 million, $5 million, $10 million. Like some people have that number. And so we have to manage around that number. So that could be a long-term goal. Legacy planning could be huge. And you kind of briefly talked about estate planning. Well, that's part of estate planning, legacy planning. Do you have a number? Do you say, you know what, I've got 3 kids, I want to leave each one of them $2 million? Or do you say...
you're using high numbers. It doesn't always have to be high numbers.
It doesn't have to be high numbers, but
right?
I'm using these as examples.
Yeah. I'm like,
but everyone has that... And that's where insurance came into place, right? That's why people had insurance, because they had a number they wanted to leave for kids. I think that in if it's okay to go into estate planning, I mean, there's some very simple things you can do in estate planning. Again, it could be a long-term goal for people in their 60s, 70s, or whatever. But there's things that you can do, very simple things, like look at your beneficiaries. Like that's part of estate planning. Look at your retirement plan beneficiaries. It's so easy to change that on an ongoing basis. You may have picked something 15 years ago that is like, you may have picked somebody who's not even living right now. Like look at all your beneficiaries. Look at your insurance policies. Look at the beneficiaries on your insurance policies. Your IRAs, your 401ks. All of those things are extremely important to look at. If you haven't done your will in the last 7 years, you should go back and have your will done. You should definitely look into that. Sometimes people are in their 40s or 50s and they have a will and a parent was there to take care of their kids. Maybe your kids are 21 now and they don't need to be, you don't need to have a guardian in there. The laws have changed. So you need to look at the current laws and speak to an attorney in your state that's going to give you a good idea on the will. A lot of people will run out and say, I need to get a trust, I need a will. No, I don't know if you need a trust. You need to talk to a lawyer and see what that, but you should talk to a lawyer about your goals. But healthcare proxy, everyone needs to have a healthcare proxy ideally. You need to have a power of attorney. That's very important. It's part of the estate plan as well. Make sure that power of attorney is something that could be used in the financial world. Sometimes we have some restrictions that are not just very simple. So you need to have that looked at as well. So healthcare proxy, power of attorney. I always say, people always say, well, I always say the worst thing is not that that one day you pass away. The worst thing is that you get sick, you can't make decisions. Your partner is taking care of you and having to make the decisions, and everything is just kind of up in the air. So they don't know what's going to happen, right? So that puts a very damper. So you need to have those things in place.
So what happens if you don't have those things in place, and then you say you have a client that you've managed for all these years, but those final things that you thought were taken care of weren't taken care of? How does that mess you up? I mean, not you up, but how does that mess up their estate?
Well, it messes me up in a sense because now we can't make financial decisions for a client that's incapacitated. So how do we decide, who do we talk to about selling a stock or bond? Who do we have to shut down the account. We can't do anything. The family has to go to court. It could be a really bad thing. We're in a market like this where the market is very top. But what if the market falls down 500 points? Then what do we do? So, it really puts us in a bind as far as doing the right thing for the client as well. You asked the other thing you asked about is how does it affect the client as well? So the clients can, if they don't have the right paperwork or their let's say the beneficiary, but their POA, power of attorney, doesn't have the right paperwork for a financial institution, and a lot of these power of attorneys were rewritten or were written 20 years ago. They're not compliant anymore. So that's really important as well. So that just really having that checked out is important to us.
Good stuff. We're going to get ready to take a break, and then when we get back, because one thing we didn't leave in there is college. Is looking at investment for college.
Okay.
Like, are there specific vehicles that clients use just for that? But we're going to take a break, and we will come back and talk to Cliff Griffin.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network.
Hi, I'm Oscar Nordstrom, author and host of Off the Beaten Path, a show for listeners of every cultural, political, and social leaning. Each Thursday, we'll explore subjects from religion to science to philosophies to live by, and figures from the history books and sports annals, and a frank and informed discussion on social issues, all for enriching your life and bridging the gaps that divide us. Join me on a thought-provoking journey off the beaten path every Thursday from 1 to 2 p.m. live on talkradio.nyc.
Are you into comics, movies, and pop culture at large? What about music and TV? Then you're in for a treat. This is Michael Dolce, your host on TalkingAlternative.com. I've been professionally writing comic books, screenplays, and music articles for almost 15 years. Catch my show, Secrets of the Sire, at its new primetime slot, Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and get the inside scoop on the pop culture universe you love to talk about. For more info, go to secretsofthesire.com.
TalkingAlternative.com.
Hi, you're back. It's Antonia, and we're listening to So Now You Know. We're with Cliff Griffin from Merrill Lynch. Cliff, we're just ending that segment, and I just want to finish this piece about saving for college, because I do think a lot of families, and especially the price tag that we have on college these days, is just ridiculous. And a lot of times it is a factor into where we send our kids or can send our kids. Mm-hmm. So what would you suggest for young couples that are starting out with a young family that might not have college on the radar, but probably should? Because by the time that child is going to college, the prices are going to be. I don't even want to think about it when our kids are ready to go to college.
Absolutely. College planning is extremely important right now, and especially as we talked about those short-term, intermediate, and long-term goals. So that probably, if you're a young couple and just starting having kids, it's a long-term goal, right? But it is 17, 18 years down the road that you're saving for that. So now you're doing your 401k, mm-hmm. you're paying down debt, and now you got to save for college education as well. That's very important because you know what? Now it's not just college. It's graduate school. Right. It's like, right. What are you now? Let's talk about that. How much are your kids going to graduate school? Well, how do you know at 5 years old what they're going to do? And so you need to talk about the different vehicles that you can use. The most popular one is 529 accounts. Most couples are using these 529s in most states. You have to talk to your tax advisor, but in many states there's some tax deductions that they can get for the 529. There are some other benefits where they're invested in a variety of mutual funds, and they're age-weighted 529s that I like a lot, and I use those for my kids. I think that's one big way to do it. And then there's the Uniform Gift to Minors Act account, the UGMA accounts, where a person could buy an individual stock. So maybe they want to buy an individual stock in a portfolio or a stock that they want to hold for a very long period of time. There are some different restrictions on the UGMA, and it's state specific, so I won't go into it. But those are the two biggest vehicles that people use. But the 529 has a lot of flexibility because you cannot give it to your kid and give it to someone else or give it to another family member if you decided at 18 that they were not going to go to college or something. So you have control of it.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is great stuff. Again, these are just information. Right, we're not. So we definitely want to get in touch with Cliff to get some more detailed information. So I want you to share with everybody how they can get in touch with you, or the best way to, if they have further questions that they can ask before, because I don't want to end without us giving out that information. And then we got a couple of questions.
Okay, the best way to reach me, I can certainly be reached on the Merrill Lynch site. You can look me up under Cliff Griffin. I can also be emailed at l.cliff.griffin@ml.com. Either way.
All right, because you know your stuff. You definitely know your stuff. And it's interesting because you were talking about, having dinner with a client and so forth. But a lot of what you do is all about relationship. And I trust you. So I think it's key because, again, one of those hurdles is trusting someone with all this information that you're talking about. Who are you going to sit down and lay out all of the good, bad, ugly for them to look at and say, this is what you need to do. You need to be saving, right? So you're very trustworthy.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So we have a question. Can I ask you a question that
Sure.
someone had emailed in?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we're going to call this John. He is been married shy of a year and 2 months, and both of them are in their 20s.
Uh-huh.
What advice on getting out of debt quickly, student loans, credit cards, etc., and the best ways to save or invest money?
So one of the things on getting out of debt is I really think, just get a spreadsheet, put how much you owe, the balance, put how much you're currently paying, the minimum payment, I would say, on the plan, on that particular credit card for all these various credit cards, and more importantly, the interest rate. So the one thing you want to do is consolidate your debt and get the lowest interest rate you possibly can. That's, I would say, one of the first things. While you're doing that, or as you do that, then you may want to pay the same amount of money that you were paying before the debt, and so you could pay off the credit cards quicker. But still, don't forget to pay yourself first. So that's very important as well. So maybe you take 50% of what you make or 60% of what you make and pay off debt. The other 40% you save. Some of that savings goes into your retirement plan. The other part of that savings goes into some kind of investment plan. So I think that is the way to manage, even it doesn't matter if you're 22 or 42. In a sense, you still have those kind of areas that you really need to balance that out.
Okay, and his second question is whether or not you're aware of any Black-owned banking institutions that people can choose to invest or save their money. And also, what are the risks in doing so compared to using more popular institutions as Chase or Bank of America? So I think kind of his question's going to where you culturally want to bank at a certain bank for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. Is there a higher risk there than going to some of the big named banks that are in our communities?
Yeah, I don't think the risk of any institution that you invest in, I think, is the reputation of that institution. There are a lot of sites you can go on and look at. There are some insurances that some of the institutions have for their savings or money market accounts, and so you want to make sure that they are covered. Are they covered up to $250 or $500? There are a variety of those. So any institution that you invest in, you want to make sure that they have that. Now the banks also are rated by different agencies as well. So you want to try to get the stronger banks. Would be ideally if you were wanting to protect yourself in case of a really downturn or 2008 situation. That I would look at in particular.
Okay, and our next question is, I hear people talking about investing in gold when the stock market is booming. Is there any validity to that statement?
So gold is the safe haven, right? So you have a market like this, you're worried about a depression, not even a recession, but you're worried about depression. Gold is the place to be, right? So how do you do that? Do you buy gold coins? Do you buy gold gold bars, or you can invest in funds that buy gold. A lot of times these commodity funds will have gold, platinum, silver, and a variety of different asset classes. It can be very volatile, but you've heard that in the Depression you want to have gold, right? Because that's the only thing that's going to be worth anything if we go into a depression. And so it is. So people will say it. I've said that for many, many years. We see very few people that have a significant amount of gold, unless you're just really doom and gloom on the markets as a whole.
So do you ever have clients that come in and say, I only want to invest in this, or they have their heart set on a particular stock, and you're kind of saying, well, that might not be the best fit for you? It seems like a lot of people would come in strong-minded about
a lot of times what happens is people will go to a cocktail party, and they'll have dinner, and they'll say, how come we don't own this? Right. This company did 30% last year, and why don't we own it in our portfolio? And I say, well, let me look at the company and let me find out more about it. And then I say, well, why we don't own it? Because it's a very risky company. Mm-hmm. It's not highly rated, and they just did extremely well last year, and you told me you didn't want to take a lot of risk, so that couldn't be. But what we do is I look at our firm's research, I look at outside research, and then I kind of say, okay, here's what's going on with this company. Here's what I think based on the research that I've read and that's come up about this company. It could be a great product, but they don't know how to make money. So I really have to look deeper into it and say, is this something? Here's what I would suggest, whether you buy it or not buy it, and this is how much I would suggest that you buy of it. Maybe it's or I found companies that have been like really good that a client has recommended that just didn't come up on my radar screen. I was like, wow, this is a very good company. Ended up buying it for other clients as well.
So how do you deal with the political climate and the effects that our current political state has on the market?
Well, so the politics, the political statement, there are several things that the market is looking at. First of all, we look primarily at companies and are they earning money or are they not. So that is really the bottom line. How are the quarterly earnings coming out? What is the projection for the year end? We look at things as like unemployment. We look at things like inflation. We look at other various things that may or may not be involved. The political outlook may be involved. Now, obviously, if there's something drastic goes on that could be caused, like an example of a war or something that is very, that is not related to the market, then we try to say, how is the market going to react to that? The idea that taxes may be cut is a situation where the market as a whole is looking at it as if corporate taxes are cut, it could be a good sign for the companies. Is it going to happen? We don't know that as well. So that's kind of how we look at that.
So there was a lot of talk this morning about just about that we're retiring older, but we're not healthy.
What we're seeing with retirement is people are retiring 2 and 3 times, right? So they have that job they were working for 20 years. They go and work for another company that they just as a fun job at the golf course because they want, so we are seeing people retire in that sense. We're seeing people retire 2 and 3 times. As far as healthy is concerned, people are living longer. There's more medicine out there and other services that folks can use as well. So you just have to figure out, and that's part of when as you're doing your long-term planning, you're like, okay, am I healthy and how healthy am I? And so should I retire in 10 years or 5 years? A lot of times people have some health problems inside. You know what? We need to move that up to 2 years or 3 years. This is
such great stuff. For those of you who have any questions for Cliff, please visit our website at talkradio.nyc, and you can send an email, so you can leave comments. You can reach out to Merrill Lynch to find Cliff, to ask him questions directly. So I will see you next week. This is Antonia for So Now You Know. Coming up is Rob and Callie and their show. So I hope you enjoyed this. And again, reach out with any questions and concerns to Cliff or myself, and we will see you next week.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network.
Who do you want to connect with?
Are you an entrepreneur or intrapreneur looking to build your following?
Welcome to our show.
Follow Me Friday with Joan
and Priya.
Tune in every Friday at noon Eastern
on talkradio.nyc.
We're your digital connectors. Woo woo! What's that?
Hey, all you crazy listeners. Looking to boost your business? Why not advertise on Talking Alternative with very reasonable rates? Interested? Simply email at info@talkingalternative.com.
Are you into comics, movies, and pop culture at large? What about music and TV? Then you're in for a treat. This is Michael Dolce, your host on TalkingAlternative.com. I've been professionally writing comic books, screenplays, and music articles for almost 15 years. Catch my show, Secrets of the Sire, at its new primetime slot, Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and get the inside scoop on the pop culture universe you love to talk about. For more info, go to secretsofthesire.com.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network at www.talkingalternative.com. Now, broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Talking Alternative. Hi, this is Rob Kay.
And I'm Callie Alpert.
And we're hosts of The Rob and Callie Show. Are you looking for a show that talks about real stuff like life, love, the pursuit of being yourself?
Then you have come to the right place, because we cover topics ranging from chivalry to gratitude to your relationship with money and everything in between.
So listen to us on The Rob and Callie Show, Tuesdays, 8 to 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network.